good morning, good afternoon, and good night.
What's up? Greetings, Earthlings. What up?
Any demographic I identify with.
They're connected to our president.
I think an ignorant voter and a non-voter
crazy what he did. He took the military out
are
before
one and
he
the
took
same.
the civilians. Who does that?
Under his watch.
What
Know
has
something,
he done
bro.
about police reform in this country? Nothing.
Greetings, Earthlings, and welcome to Unsolicited Genius. I am your curator, Carlton Ennis, and I am joined by my day one homie, my brother from another mother, C. Lindo, also better known as Craig Lindo. On today's show, simply put, we will talk about the police. We hope to give you something to ponder. What up, Craig? What up? What is up, my brother? How are you?
Healthy, wealthy, and handsome, my boy. Ain't nothing else to it.
I think healthy. I could check those boxes for you. You looking good with your glasses and clean zero. So for today's show, we got one topic, and it is not a new topic. It is not a new occurrence. You and I talked a little bit before the show. We have been brothers for a long time, and we were in middle school when we saw the footage of Rodney King's beating. Middle school with the subsequent riots, middle school with the subsequent outcomes. And so here we are, not in middle school, a whole bunch of years later, and for all intents and purposes, witness footage of the same thing. And so before we get into the discussion, I just want for our audience to articulate some of the facts as they have been shared publicly. So we're talking about Tyre Nichols and his ultimate beating and death as a result of an encounter with Memphis police. On January 7th, Nichols was pulled over for suspected reckless driving. At that time, a confrontation with the police occurred. Shortly thereafter, Nichols fled on foot. Subsequently, a second confrontation occurred, resulting in Nichols' arrest. Ambulance were called to the scene after Nichols complained of being short of breath. On January 10th, 3 days later, Nichols dies due to the use of force incident with officers. January 15th, 5 of these officers were relieved of duty. On January 20th, the 5 officers were named and fired. On January 23rd, the family viewed the video. January 26th, the officers were indicted with charges that included second-degree murder, aggravated assault, kidnapping, official misconduct, and official oppression. On January 27th, the video footage was released to the public. On January 30th, a 6th officer, white officer, was released of duty. He was heard on the video saying, "I hope they stomp his ass." And he was the officer that also tased Nichols. In addition, on January 30th, 3 members of the fire department were fired, 2 emergency medical technicians and a lieutenant, because they failed to conduct an adequate patient assessment. So those are the facts as I got them. What say you, Brother Craig?
Wow. I'll start there. First, thank you for the chronological, anecdotal facts as you laid them out. See, I appreciate that.
They're not.
I note a couple things. All of the gentlemen were allegedly a part of the 5 main core gentlemen were allegedly a part of some unit called the Scorpion Unit.
Yes.
Which has since been disbanded. And it sounded mad sus anyway. It sounded like a way to infiltrate and harass using their own people so that they won't know they're being infiltrated and harassed almost, but maybe not. I don't know, but the unit is dead. Two things come to mind for me: education and rotation.
Okay.
Right? The education piece I think I've referred to before. Soldiers get access to guns, but their training is longer in most cases. I do think that the standards for not just police, but since that's the topic of conversation, there are multiple public-facing, public service jobs that need an upgrade in their standards. That includes education and policing. For different reasons, but it's mandatory, necessary for both to serve the public the way they would most efficiently and beneficially serve a public, right? So changes in both need to happen. I do think both education I think at this point, why is there not a minimal requirement for a bachelor's of arts or science in law enforcement before police academy? Right? And as far as rotation, the familiarity that some of these guys have allows them to bond and carry out each other's ulterior vendettas and motives and other stuff that goes on. All right? Because they bond, they become boys. I'm saying this from a few different levels. One, 20 plus, however many years later, I'm still living in the community I grew up in, working in the community I grew up in. So some of my peers that I graduated high school with are local police officers, but I've been a classroom teacher for 2 decades. Some of my former 12-year-old students are now 30-plus-year-old police officers. And I could say from both angles that the standards need to go up. Hell, I say, and that's why I say it in education too, because here's the thing. You're having people getting these positions of power with unprocessed issues in their childhood, and they're taking it out on people when they hit them streets. Not everybody needs to be on that, especially with a weapon and a new gang behind them. Especially if you some duck-tard, simp, whatever, you finally feeling yourself. There's some of these dudes that have never felt this confident in their life. They got a whole gang behind them and a gun on their belt, and they are acting different. And that is not everybody. I want to be clear on that. Mm-hmm. You understand what I'm saying? Because I know both. But between the people I grew up with that are now local officers in the same area I grew up in, and some of the students that I taught that are now officers, I know for a fact there's no way in hell that person has way too many unprocessed issues and anger to be given a gun and what's it called again? Something immunity. Well, you can't process the cops. It's something immunity, qualified immunity.
Yeah, qualified immunity, right.
No. Some of my coworkers in the schoolhouse shouldn't be teaching. You didn't process all the BS with the people that bullied you in middle school. So now everybody that kind of reminds you of the girls that bullied you in middle school, you treat them students like poo-poo. You should not be teaching. Go process your ish and come back.
Yeah.
So for me, I say education, the standards need to go up in both fields, but we're talking about that one. And rotation. Rotation prevents too much familiarity so that they can conspire into each other's agendas and do some duckity-duck-ish. You know what I'm saying? So that's my initial to that.
Okay. All right.
Raise your standards. Change your life.
All right, well, appreciate you sharing. I'll share my thoughts and then we can continue
sure.
our discussion. So I don't watch violence, reality violence. You know, John Wick, I will be there opening night. You feel me? But when it's
Yes.
real, when it's World Star, when it's, you know, not Colorado, but the Buffalo grocery store shooting, I don't gravitate toward that activity. But I can't tell you why. Maybe it was, I have a police officer friend, her reaction. Maybe it was a couple other people's comments who had saw the video, but something made me want to watch this. And as you know, we've talked about this stuff before. We've seen it before. It happens. George Floyd, Rodney King. You know, it happens, right? But I'm gonna just focus on what I saw, what I heard in this instance before talking big picture. So, you know, for me, I reacted to the fact that there were 5 Black officers indicted with his death. You know, I saw that before I saw the video. And I asked, you know, I wondered why, you know, why would they, knowing what they know about what's going on in our culture, what's going on in our society, the things that we've talked about on this podcast, the things that the internet is talking about, what would make them think that they should, that this was the thing to do? So that was my initial reaction when I saw just the fact that there were 5 officers fired, indicted, etc. I hadn't seen the video yet. But then to see the video, I'm bigger than dude. You don't need 6 officers to hold him down, to subdue him.
Pac, talk about this.
They took turns beating him. His arms were held behind his back. One of the officers measured the distance. When you see maybe Muhammad Ali or somebody doing, you know, making fun of their opponent, it's like, let me back up. Let me make sure that I get a clean shot. And hit him in his face, punched him in his face, kicked him while he was on the ground, beat him with a baton while he was underground, being held down by other officers. He was unarmed. It took nearly 10 minutes for anyone to initiate, after they beat him down, after his body had gone limp, after they dragged him and sat him up against a vehicle. It took 10 minutes as they talked and walked back and forth, and one of the officers hurt his foot either running or kicking him as he limped around fussing and cussing, as they were dapping each other up like this was business as usual. It took 10 minutes for somebody to initiate medical care to him. They hid the body cams footage. They turned away so the body cam wouldn't capture everything. They yelled, "Stop resisting arrest! Put your arm, give us your hands," to make it seem as if he was resisting them as they proceeded to beat him down. The cop that got released to duty today, his body cam was the first one I saw. You could see him shoot his taser. And after he ran, as I stated, he and another officer were on the original scene. A couple of the officers, I guess, went to go chase after him. But those that stayed on scene one, that included the officer that was released to duty today, he says when they catch him, he made the statement, "I hope they stomp his ass." So to your point, this behavior was a known. This what they do. And the unit, the Scorpion unit, stood for, because it has been disbanded, Street Crime Operation to Restore Peace in Our Neighborhoods. That's what they were titled, but what they did, based on some other reports that came out about this particular unit and their behavior patterns and complaints that had been filed against the unit that had gone unresponded to, is they just a bunch of gangsters that like to beat dudes down. So to watch this, to hear this, and to then hear him scream from his mother, because he was, from my understanding, a few yards away from her home, his home, their home. It's sad, because he was defeated to the point, beaten to the point, with nowhere to go, nothing to do. He had already tried to run to get away, that all he could do was call for his mom. The last sound that can be heard coming from him, because I don't know that he regained full consciousness once he went to the hospital, was him calling for his mom. So with that bit of information, amongst what you shared about the requirements, the standards, rotation, I think that's a creative idea. What I come away from is there is a race problem in this country. There is a problem with the value of Black lives and how it is perceived through the eyes of people who are not Black, in particular, those who are in positions to enforce the law, write the laws, create the laws, judiciate the laws, a la the judge that was sentencing people to Black men to jail in order to get some kickbacks. That's a problem in our country, and it shows up where in every system. And specifically for the police units of this country, there is a culture problem, because they beat Black people, but they beat white people. They rape women. They fight amongst themselves. They plot against those who try to do right. You had the officer. This was a white officer, white woman. White male officer was being overly aggressive on the scene. The other officers did nothing. The one woman that tried to say, "Hey man, chill out," he choked her on the spot. So say what you want, Stratosphere. The boys in blue have a cultural problem. And it didn't start with the Scorpion unit. And unless somebody decides, if somebody's in positions of influence decide to do the right thing, it's not going to stop with the Scorpion unit. So I'll end my soapbox speech from at that point. This is a tough one, dog. This is a tough one.
It is.
I don't like it.
From a few different angles.
I don't like any of them, but this one is tough. I think 4 of the men.
This is a hell of a remix on black violence, bro.
Yeah. I think 3 or 4 of them were Qs. Are Qs, were Qs, depending on how the fraternity decides they want to respond. But it's 5 people who, to me, should know better, should want to do better.
I didn't know that last piece of info.
Yeah.
That's wild.
Yeah. And what about, had you heard about the rumor about the potential that Nichols may have been involved with the ex-wife of one of the officers, and that was the premeditation behind the plot?
I didn't really catch wind of that till the latter part of this afternoon, to the extent that I can't say I made an effort to fact check it, but it did cross my eyes on Twitter and one other social media platform, right?
Yeah.
Before any group chats. Like I was like, yo, all right, wait, let me wait and see if this fact check, because I'm like,
Yeah.
when I'm trying not to curse, that's real sucker energy on top of everything else. On top of being whatever kind of human being you are now, like it just, it's wild for me. Like, so there's a few things that happen. One, between the folk I grew up with and some of my proteges, I have heard the phrase tighten him up a few times, or variations on that. It's a variation on, okay, this perp, suspect, whatever, made us run a little extra to capture him. So when we do get to him, we're going to tighten him up, or other language along those lines.
Right.
Now, that, let's be fair, I've also heard officers of the law say in those same conversations, yo, yeah, it's natural to want to run when the cops can get you, so I don't need to tighten you up. I'd have ran too.
Okay.
But I've heard more former than the latter. The latter's a rarity. Somebody that logically says, hey, I'd have run too, so I don't need to go through all that. As long as he ain't do nothing, I just put him in the cuffs and keep it moving. You know what I'm saying? Whereas I have sat there in quote unquote cop bars. There's a lot of them in South Florida. Retired cops get liquor licenses and open bars a lot, especially in Broward. Retired cops and police officers. So you have certain bars, depending on the owner, they might be known low-key as cop bars or whatever. So you run in there and find a bunch of retired cops drinking beer and whatever else for cheap. And they go over their own stories, and the more liquor goes in, the looser the lips. And this is the kind of stuff they talk about, brag about, celebrate in some cases.
Culture.
I'm impressed. I'm impressed with the dude that's drunk and like, nah, that's fucked up. But he's hardly ever there. He's hardly ever there.
Right.
They don't hang with each other.
Yeah. I wonder why.
You know what I'm saying? He's hardly ever there. So the whole crew, like, you know what? You made me run an extra block to catch you. I'm going to tighten you up. That's part of the culture from what I'm overhearing in.
Yeah.
And that's just not my generation. Again, some of the former students, some of them should never have gotten a gun, bro.
Some of these officers were in their 20s. So, you know, it's
in early 30s.
It's again more evidence to the issue of culture. And, you know, a couple things I want to be clear. One, the statement about the ex-wife and all that, that's rumor. We don't know. I haven't been able to verify, validate it, but it is showing up in more places. It sounds
reasonable.
Well, it sounds reasonable to your other point when you say it's a sucker duck behavior, because the entire scene, the entire encounter was sucker duck behavior. So if you sucker duck over here, you just as easily gonna be sucker duck in other areas of your life, in particular, a man in his sucker duckness when it comes to women.
A leopard is a leopard, whether it's in the jungle, the savannah, the zoo, whatever setting you put the leopard in, it's a leopard.
And I have cops that are friends. You know, I got black friends, I got white friends, I got friends, I got cops that are friends. I love police officers for what they sacrifice for our well-being. I respect the profession. I think we need the profession. I have been the beneficiary of the profession. And I want them to thrive and flourish in all areas of their life. I think they should be paid more. I think they should be regarded more. I think they should be treated better in all areas of their life. They shouldn't have to pay for meals. They shouldn't have to pay to go to the movies. They should be honored and revered like a military. They should have health care that's endless. They should have psychological care that's endless. There's a lot that I believe they deserve for what they do.
I'm holding up the pen because I co-sign.
That being said, there's a behavior pattern amongst the industry. I guess that's a way to look at it, because it's everywhere. It's in Austin. It's in other parts of Texas. It's in Miami. It's in Orlando. It's in Jacksonville. It's in LA. It's in Memphis. It's in Chicago. It's in New York. It's in Omaha, Nebraska. I got a friend. She lived in Omaha, Nebraska. You got to go.
I just want to say one thing real quick on that pattern. Like, dog, Proud Boys in these organizations, some of the same dudes that I saw in them cop bars prior to 2020, I was mind blown. They popping up on TV on some January 6th jump. But see, the Proud Boys, we process them as an anti-black organization. I think for that, you think it's a bunch of white boys leading it or whatever. He's on TV in his glasses taking interviews, but his whole last name is Spanish. And when I conversed with him in that bar, he was talking about his Spanish background. So that adds another nuance into the South Florida aspect of things, because there's a part of the population that identifies with the supremacists, with the racists. Even though those same racists don't fuck with them.
You got factions, because let's be clear, we know that there's police officers that do not like anybody that's not white. That's you could pretend you don't know, but we know that's fact. I was mentioning Omaha, Nebraska. I had a friend that lived there. Police behavior foul. So that is a known. And then you have in this instance where these men are black, went to HBCUs, pledged historically black fraternity. They talk black, they walk black, they exist black. But the fact that this person offended them, whether it's the rumor something happened before or because he made them run, whatever it was, it drew out that cardinal behavior pattern that we saw with George Floyd, that we saw with the list of names on all the posters, on all the Twitter, the women, men that have been brutalized, beaten, killed by police. We got 2 cases here in Texas, one in Houston, one a little south of Austin, where these men died in custody. And don't nobody know why. Now, for the one in south of Austin, there is a video that people are waiting to see, but we also saw footage of 4 or 5 police officers while the man was in custody, beat him down like there was a gang. And that was inside the police house, where I would assume they knew in the police house there's cameras, but they did it anyway.
You know, you remember that Pac song, "You Ain't Shit Without Your Homeboys"? Okay, I'll stop that. I'll leave it there. The asking for your mama while you, like, it reminded me of George Floyd, and it hit me a little deep. I have no problem. I am a mama's boy. I'm mama's, well, you gonna call me mama's boy, mama's little man, whatever. You got beef with it, pull up. It is what it is. If you got beef with it, you could either pull up or not fuck with me, but that's who I am, right? And so, and I do feel a lot of brothers, due to the circumstance they may have grown up in, might be able to be pushed into that category. But you know the kind of pain and distress I have to be in to call for my mom, bro?
Yeah.
I can't process me doing that unless I see my end of life at hand, and I'm providing you evidence to let my mom know I loved her. There is no other way.
Yeah.
I am not asking for her unless I see my end of life in front of me.
That was hard. That you know, we know what's happened before, right? But most of them we don't see. We saw George Floyd, we saw Rodney King. couple in between, but not a whole lot. I think about the gentleman shot in the back. I think that was in the Carolina area.
And as for
but we
somebody
didn't
that
hear
has
it.
worked, as for somebody that's worked for state and county agencies for years, all that stuff in the background. See, there's been a transition over recent years with cameras getting cheaper and more easily available. I've worked in public service for a long time. Whether it was NFETC or by way of K through 12 education, I've worked for the establishment, you know what I'm saying, for a long time. And I know that your documentation, especially prior to camera, whatever your anecdotal documentation is, that is in court. Your reports trump a lot of stuff. And when you start yelling certain things like, oh yeah, stop resisting that, you're just trying to add, it's like when they add the little starch to the gravy to get it thicker because it wasn't really thick. It was flavory, but watery.
Now you spitting technique. I had to add some starch to my spaghetti sauce.
You understand what I'm saying?
Yeah,
that's all that is. You just thicken in the sauce because your report, there is a innate bias towards the public service officials' reports, especially written in a court of law.
Mm-hmm.
It might get castrated with a video, so you might cover it, turn away, whatever.
Mm-hmm.
You understand what I'm saying? It becomes useless.
But to be savvy enough, if we say to do that, right, suggests that it's done
You a
before.
slimy MF.
And to have done it before with this level of effectiveness is a culture problem, because of what caught them was the street light camera that they didn't know was there. Because if it relied solely on the body cam footage, you wouldn't have known. What I watched, I believe, all the footage that between the body cam and the street light cam, and I was trying to figure out what I was looking at when it came to the body cam footage, because I almost didn't see a swing kick made. But when you see it from the street light, you see all of it. And to watch the footage, I was the body cam footage, I was trying to align what I was hearing with what I saw from the street cam, because it says, put your arms behind your back. His arms was behind his, I thought his arms were behind his back. Exactly. And they were holding him. And
so
what
now
else?
I could write in my report,
yeah,
my codes or whoever, they were repeatedly asking the perp to put his hands on it and he wouldn't listen, I could paint a picture in my written report, especially if you don't have a camera to save you. I'm in a position of power as a public service employee. Whatever my report is holds more weight than your word in the court of law, unless you got a really good lawyer. Because again, I've said this before on here. In the United States of America, the one thing I've learned is not about if you're right or wrong, it's who has the better lawyer. You could be dead wrong. As long as you got a better lawyer, it doesn't matter.
True that.
Shout out to my lawyer friend.
Ask Johnny Depp about it. You know, the other thing I mentioned.
Ask Zimmerman.
Don't get me started. The other thing I mentioned were the 3 members of the fire department that got fired for failure to conduct an adequate patient assessment. Well, what you see is at a certain point, more officers, more officials arrived to the scene. Once, the beat down, from what I estimate, was about 6 minutes. It wasn't, it was about 5 to 6 minutes. If you've ever been in a fight,
that's a long bleeping time.
Right. No, so it was 5 to 6 minutes. And by the 10-minute mark, he had been dragged he was limp. I can't say conscious, unconscious. I couldn't tell. I feel like he had some level of low level consciousness, but he was limp. He wasn't moving. So he was cuffed. They dragged him, sat him up against the vehicle, and he sat. So as there were other officers arriving to the scene, as these original set of officers were depping each other up, somebody with the ability to provide medical care was present. But from what I could see, that maybe they were walking, talking, being collegial, taking their time. There wasn't any urgency to serving him. And so for the ambulance to arrive, I don't remember the minute mark that the ambulance arrived, but I want to say, give or take 15 to 20 minutes after everything had gone down is when he ended up in the ambulance and on his way to the hospital. So the verbiage used for the reason they were fired, failed to conduct an adequate patient assessment, suggests to me that there wasn't urgency, there wasn't diligence, and ultimately on the scene, my version of it is they could care less what happened to him, which goes back to it's a culture problem. And for it to be the police officers, for it to be the fire department, for it to be EMS, for it to be anybody along the chain of events prior to his death, that's a system, that's a network. And the problems we speak to that we're talking about are systemic. It's not just these 5 officers. It's not just George Floyd's officer. Is not just you talked about Zimmerman. It's not just the court that freed Zimmerman. It is a systemic issue because it exists. The discrimination, the hate, the racism, the lack of valuing life exists on multiple levels when it comes to the criminal justice system.
Agreed. I'll add to that. I think, I am all in. My philosophy in life, all things are one, as above, so below, whatever, call me hermetic, whatever. So things beget. You know what I'm saying? On a biological level, bees beget bees, human beget humans. In terms of behavior, some people call it karmic, things beget. Love gets more love, violence gets more violence. Whatever gets, it begets more of the same thing. So you got the Scorpion unit that is supposed to be removing violence from the streets, but they're using violence. That doesn't work. Violence begets violence. You know what I'm saying? Unnecessary violence begets more unnecessary violence. Things beget itself. Things reproduce. You know what I mean? So that felt contradictory to me from that aspect. Now, as far as how I felt seeing that he was getting tightened up by people that quote unquote looked like him. All right. Throwing this, not all your kinfolk or skinfolk or whatever thing like that fits right there at that moment, right? But now taking it to the systemic part of where you are, where you're coming from, brother C.I. This young man, he got jumped. This was a street level activity conducted by people in professional clothing. Is the fact that there is a system that is that old, that is so unevolved that this could infiltrate, proves your point. There is no way, if you are continually revisiting your system for improvements, This tells me you haven't been doing that, because a system this old, it's a little weird to have these kind of flaws. Did that make sense?
Yep.
Okay.
Yep.
I'll
yep,
shut
yep,
up.
Yep.
That's kind of where I go on that. And as far as the I think the word kickbacks came out a little bit earlier. Yup. The privatized prison system. Yup.
It's connected. Well, what I'll say before we take our break is, Tyre, rest in peace. To your mom, I'm sorry for your loss. I'm sorry you weren't able to respond to your baby's cries. And to his son, you have lost your father tragically, and nobody will ever be able to fill that void for you. And I'm sorry for that. I pray that your life is filled with love. I pray that your life is filled with guidance and support and prosperity. And despite what has been done to you, that you are able to flourish. And to his friends, those that have talked about what he meant to them, what he's done in their community, the little girl who, I guess she was skating and he, helped teach her a few tips. Honor his name. Honor his name. Hold your boy down. And with that, we'll take a break and be right back. Welcome back, everybody. Unsolicited Genius. Before we let you all go, I'd like to give Uncle Mo a shout out. He's not here today. I'm going to say it's because he's under the weather, not because the 49ers it was bad. It was bad. I think
that's why he don't want to talk to us.
The Giants' loss was bad, right? But we exceeded expectation.
Exactly. I can't talk trash to somebody that, respectfully speaking, you overachieved for what the start of the season provided to me.
The Eagles took out two of their quarterbacks and played a hell of a football game. And 49ers tried. I don't even remember the score.
Fitty got somebody writing a script on that murder right now. There's gonna be a new show on Stars about it.
Hold on. Let me check the score. I don't remember the score. I know I turned it off.
Wasn't it 31-7 or something like that?
Was it that bad? Oh yeah, it was that bad. Oh, I thought it was.
It was a trouncing.
Yeah, it was a trouncing. McCaffrey showed up. He did what he could. So Mo don't like to talk. Mo don't like to talk about hope, so I can't say better luck. He don't like to hear that next year talk. So all that to say is, rest up, Uncle Mo. It's how I go. We'll be on the couch together, watching the Super Bowl. So it's okay. It's okay.
Heard. Word.
All right. So to the audience, don't forget to like, subscribe, follow, share, comment, chat. Let us know what you think. All the good stuff that you're supposed to do on social media. We on TikTok somewhere. What I said I was going to say Amazon. We're not on Amazon yet, but TikTok. I'm on LinkedIn, Facebook. We out there. Instagram. We out there. Twitter. We out there. So seek us out. We watching us on YouTube right now, so we out there. But seek us out, connect with us, share some love, share your thoughts. Let us know what you think about the Memphis Police. Thank you to our sponsors, Legacy Wear. Your legacy awaits. You can find them at www.legacywearus.com. Megacore CBD, shout out to them. Broad spectrum hemp derived CBD, the way nature intended. Find them at www.megacorecbd.com. That's the letter C, the letter B, the letter D.com. And last but not least, Aura Rainwater, that tells us to hydrate and elevate. You can find them and all the moves that they're making at www.aurarainwater.com. Any last words for the peoples, Brother Craig?
Be nice to ugly people.
That's physical ugly, emotionally ugly, all of the above.
That's an entendre, every level, whether it's chemically, atomically, behaviorally, whatever.
Okay.
Be nice to the ugly people.
That's fair. That's fair. Nice begets nice, right?
Hey, you saw where I was going with that.
All right, so for tonight's Thoughts of Genius, I got a few words. This does not have to be our life. And on that, I say good morning, good afternoon, good night. This has been episode 31. We out here making moves on Unsolicited Genius. We'll catch you the same time next week. I want to say back channel, but I don't know if that's copywritten. So we'll see you the next Genius time, same Genius channel next week.
That's even
Peace,
better.
love, and let's do better.
Craig D, Craig D, Molat. You are listening to Unsolicited Genius.